The other big question, Laura, in the politics of this, when you look at one of the big drivers of inflation, it's oil, or in other words, petrol prices. Economists will shudder at the thought of a fuel excise cut, but households will say, give it to us, please. What did you make of the decision not to go ahead with this, which, was hinted at? We heard no new major measures. Basically, there was nothing for cost of living here, really.
Yeah, and look, this is a budget update. There's nothing really remarkable in it. I don't think Jim Chalmers would be all that unhappy about seeing this budget update today make news headlines for the next 12 to 24 hours and then fade away. This is all about, the kind of the broader message here. He didn't go down that path of cutting fuel excise once again because the previous government did it. And I think that's, really the barefaced reason why he didn't do it. When you look at the numbers today, it's pretty clear that inflation is good for budget bottom lines. Look at the company tax receipts and the tax receipts. Employment still very high, but I thought what was perhaps most remarkable in that media conference, we haven't had a lot from Jim Chalmers talking about the migration strategy. We heard a lot from Claire O'Neill. We know that strategy was delayed because of the High Court shambles, but Jim Chalmers, cautious in his language there, saying that he welcomes that there'll be 180,000 fewer migrants over the next couple of years. But then he went on to say, Tom, net overseas migration had come back faster than anyone anticipated. What do you mean anyone anticipated? Governments are in control of visas and visas are issued in that way. So an admission there that it did get out of control. He went on to say clamping down where there's an obvious need to do so. Economists that I've had on my show for the last couple of months has said migration is out of control and it's not filling those skills shortage gaps. So there was a massive mismatch there. So I'm glad Jim Chalmers did address it there. But back to that macro issue, Tom, and that is, Jim Chalmers wanting to set himself up and this Labor Party up as responsible economic managers. In terms of a political fight, and what we're going to see after this is not all that much for the government the opposition to sink its teeth into. What the states have already pointed out to me this morning is when it comes to reprioritisation, well, a lot of those savings have been made by not going ahead with these big infrastructure spends. And we know how happy or unhappy the states are with that. So perhaps the bigger fight will come with the Labor states.
Yeah, they're increasingly tense relations, aren't they? Ross, I know you've got all sorts of stats on your mind, but on Andrew Clennell's point around a budget surplus, one is the fact that unemployment isn't heading, we don't think, anytime soon to that figure of 4.25%. We might be wrong, but it's not tracking that way. And the other thing is commodity prices. We don't have an exact number for what they're saying the price will be on January or in March or whatever, the one that will affect this year. But bringing up terms of trade, this has long been the case in these budgets. So have a look at this from that 21-22, the supposed path we take. They always just say terms of trade, in other words, what we get for things we sell versus things we buy, and commodities are so crucial in that, will fall off a cliff. And so far, over many years, they haven't. And this is why we think in the short term, the surplus is coming.
Yeah, surplus is coming, there's no doubt, Tom. And I mean, it's the equivalent of, say, they make around $450 million in revenue, $1 billion in revenue per year, and they're forecasting a deficit of $1.1 billion. This is the equivalent of a person earning $450,000 saying they can't save $1,000 a year. Of course they can. And so that's the issue. But it really comes down to consumption. So the first chart I want to show you, as I run you through a few charts, is about consumption. Consumption is all about 55% of Australia's economy. But have a look at what happens here as people become worried about their jobs, and really the budget here is forecasting this is going to fall. People are cutting back not just on discretionary items but also on essential items as well. So this comes back to where employment sits. And so if we go through the employment chart that's come out here through MYEFO, what you can see here is the forecast is really that you're going to see, sort of eventually a higher rate of unemployment. Now it's going to rise over a period of time. But the second part about that is really that you've also got it higher now than where the Reserve Bank is. So I did rough calculations. This ignores immigration, ignores everything. The unemployment rate currently 3.7%. In June 2024, they're forecasting it will be 4.25%. That's the equivalent of 81,000 people out of a job, right? That's compared with now. But it goes on, more than 120,000 people as compared with now out of a job a year later. That affects the way in which people consume and their confidence to consume. There's the Reserve Bank forecasts on inflation. Here's the unemployment rate, as I said, 120-odd thousand people out of work compared with today by June 2025. And I say that's an absolute key in regards to the confidence that people have in terms of consumption and therefore the economic growth this government's got in front of it.